And then, yeah, I'm going to hand over to Megan. She's going to be telling you guys a bit about Infinite and how she got to where she is today and how she grew Infinite Aviation and just kind of what they do and who they're affiliated with. So, thank you, Megan. Thanks.
It's always nice to see a group of people. My name is Megan Stevenson, and Tyler's asked me to speak today. I said to her this week, what do you want me to talk about? She went, you. I went, no. That's not my strong point. But she did want a little bit of background as to how I got to this point, because I've been doing this for some time now. Okay, so it started quite a while back. That's probably the first photo I could find of me interested in aviation. We grew up on a plot in Midrand. It's under the Vasseur departure. And I clearly remember this day. Dad had gotten home from work. He was flying 747s. And an aircraft had gotten airborne, and he was showing me, look, there they go. And as I grew up, every time he got airborne and he flew out to the north, he flew for South African Airways, he'd send me a text saying, Tick, he always called me Tick, we're pushing back, go stand outside. And I go stand outside, and as I went through 10,000 foot, he flashed the landing lights for me. So that's kind of where it started. Very special, right? And then the question came through is, what do you want to do when you're big? And this was a difficult one for me, because option A was to be a doctor. Absolutely loved physiology, loved psychology, was drawn to becoming a doctor. Option B, become a lawyer. According to my mom, I like to stand up and tell people things, so I'd be a good lawyer. Third option, aviation. I decided to go with aviation because it encompasses so much. Okay, so where could I find one industry that brought physiology, that brought psychology, that brought legal considerations, that brought investigation into play? And I found that in aviation because it is so multifaceted. And certainly in the EAA, you're going to learn all about that. Okay, so where did this land me? Well, there we go. I didn't get to fly for SA. That didn't happen. But this is Dad. This was his retirement flight. And I mapped his footsteps. And of course, he was very proud of the fact that I was following his career. So this competition between him and Mom. So where did it take me? Well, I did a lot of hour building in this little thing. My little 150, easy. That was on the way to Zanin Air Show. Then I flew Cessna Caravans, flew for Federal Airlines. Best flying you can do, best 4x4 you'll ever find. And from there I went to fly Beechcraft 1900s. Okay. Flew for a company called GRIl. They're no longer in existence. They were absorbed into Salento. This was a hot minute ago, back when the earth cooled. And it was going quite well. I got my left seat rating. Everything was great. And then, well, shit. I was medically grounded in 2009. Literally just got an left seat on the 1900. So I found myself sitting in the corner going, well, I'm in this industry that I love, but this is not what my Cinderella wish list looked like. So back to the drawing board. What do I want to be one day when I'm big? And this time I really had to apply my mind, go back to that drawing board, and this is where Mom's genetics came through, and she got very happy about this because I decided I would continue to teach. My mom is a teacher, so she's thrilled that this is now what I do. But it didn't quite start with the teaching. In fact, I got sent to Dubai by a wonderful boss who backed me at the time to go and complete a safety management instructor's course. Okay, and this is before safety management was even legislated in South Africa. And I met an amazing group of people. There's me, Cupcake in the pink, with these amazing guys. And the gentleman standing next to me, so 2 shirts down, the gentleman in the blue shirt, had also lost his medical. So we had a kinship in each other, and we were finding our new path in this industry. And that's where I went into safety management. And this captivated me. Okay. And of course, the psychology, the human factor, everything really grasped my attention. And then things like this started to happen in industry. And so often we look at an air crash investigation, we go, what did they do wrong? And we sit with a nice cup of coffee in the comfort of our lounge and find 500 ways that someone could have done something better. But this is the stuff that got me intrigued. What made safe pilots and what made successful pilots, and how are they the same and how are they different? What is this actually about? Because when we talk about guys like Sullenberger and Jeff Skiles, what made this crew so unique? To date, if they simulate this event in a 320 simulator, with crew knowing what is going to happen, where it's going to happen, and what they have to do, statistically less than 30% of pilots can actually pull it off. So what made these guys different? The answers I found were in an NTSB study called Critical Success Factors. You can go and Google this. And in the critical success factors, we found traits in pilots that were evident from birth. This has evolved to say that there are traits that we can train into pilots, which is very exciting. And when we look at them, the first is an intimate knowledge of your job and of the business in which you find yourself, which is why initiatives like this are so great, because this is tapping you straight in to a network of knowledge, right? We then have a look at a professional attitude, embracing certain things like skepticism. For those of you who fly, how often has your instructor gone, so if this happened, what would you do? And if this happened here, what would you do? And you go, why? This is what we're teaching you. We're teaching you to think for plan B. We had to look at situational awareness. I have a problem X big with so much time to solve it in, and many other factors, like things like standard operating procedures, SOPs. But what tickled me here was this intimate knowledge of the business. And this is where we see some very interesting things in general aviation in South Africa at the moment. The first thing I picked up on is something called the killing zone. Have any of you guys heard of the killing zone? Okay, I can see I've taught you. There's a very interesting study that's been going on from the late 1970s. There are pros and cons and debates and counters to this whole concept. But what we found was that there are 2 points in a pilot's career where they are most likely to get hurt and sadly fatally hurt. This occurs around the 300-hour mark, and it occurs again at the 1,000-hour mark. And if you get through those 2 milestones, you're pretty good for the rest of your career. But that is a very vulnerable space to be in, because you are at that point a young aviator. So why does this happen? Typically because of something called Dunning-Kruger. Has anyone heard of this? Human factors. It's fascinating stuff. And what you're going to see is you get somebody who gets their license and they've got their stripes and life is very, very exciting and we're filled with confidence because I aced my flight check. And you've got the confidence, but not necessarily all of the competence yet. Then you start flying and you scare yourself once or twice and you realize that gravity will in fact always win. Sometimes we draw. And when we look at this, we start saying, hang on, there's a lot more to this than I signed up for. And then you start going to the point where you think, I'm never going to know what I need to know. How do I get there? And eventually, as your competence starts to grow, you start peaking again and you end up over there saying, it's starting to fall into place, but it's definitely complicated. And it's that humility that aviation gives us that leads us into safety and into success. Okay, so we know this. This is the recipe, right? But how do we get you there? Well, this goes into the game of cognitive psychology. This is my happy place. If I had to say to you, we need to join the dots from A to B. So for those of you who are flying, maybe you've had to teach yourself how to do something like a pressure altitude calculation. And I need you to get from A to B. So in your mind, I'm saying complete the shape. Guys, what's the shape? Any takers?
Circle.
A circle. Could be a circle. It could also be that shape. It could be that shape. It could be that shape. In all cases, I've joined A to B. And I've gotten to an answer, right? But I didn't necessarily do it the correct way or follow the correct steps. And in there, we start seeing a loss of knowledge in pilots. Okay, so doing questions and answers, yes, there is huge value to it, but there's also a huge attrition of knowledge when this occurs. And the reason for that is if you put rubbish in, you get rubbish out. So let's have a journey at your brain. When we have a look at how the human brain works, you are picking up stimuli all the time. Sight, sound, smells, touch, taste, there is everything coming at you right now. Whether it's the person next to you, you can smell his hamburger, I'm sure it smells delicious. You can hear somebody behind you laughing, you've got a whole sensation around you. Your brain is filtering all this information all the time. And it's doing this through what we call the attention mechanism. How many of you guys have done an intro flight? Okay, so remember your first flight. You went out to the GF, and it was loud, and it was noisy, and the engine's vibrating, and the instructor's talking, and you're like, the blue side goes up. And all of a sudden, the instructor looks at you and goes, wait, that radio calls for us, and you go, how? How did you do that? That's the attention mechanism. It's quite a sophisticated training model called it's called the cocktail party effect. You know, when you're sitting in a bar and you're like, hey, what did you say about me? You weren't listening, but you picked it up, didn't you? That's that part of the brain. Anyway, so we go through a whole process here. We go through perception. Perception occurs when your instructor says to you, look at your airspeed. And for the instructors in the room, one of two things happen. The student looks at the airspeed, not much happens. Or they look at the airspeed and they go, oh, I'm slow, and they fix that. That's perception. The ability to assign meaning to information. Eventually we'll get this to your brain, the central decision maker. This is the front part of your brain. And it's a very interesting developmental pathway. How many of you guys are younger than 28? Okay. Your brain has not finished developing. You still have anything from 5 to 8 years of development going into the prefrontal cortex. And the prefrontal cortex is where you learn things like task management, time management, stress regulation. Those are pretty critical skills for a pilot to have. It also programs into your long-term and your short-term memory. So why is this important to us? Well, it's a balancing act for pilots. And if you've hung around, and certainly with the EAA guys, there's a common saying that's going to come across, and your instructor or an older pilot will say, you know, you start with a bag of luck. And over the years, you're going to trade this bag of luck for a bag of experience. And you're going to hope that you don't run out of luck along the way, right? So what does this actually look like cognitively? Well, on the one side of your brain, we're programming what we call your semantic memory. This is where we're teaching pilots knowledge, rules, cockpit checklists, cockpit flows, standard operating procedures. We are programming your brain to work in a knowledgeable space. Anything and everything you get out of a book, watching an air crash investigation, goes into your semantic memory. Okay. On the other side, we're programming your episodic memory, which is your event-based memory or your experience. And right now, as a junior pilot, your experience is still quite low, which means when things start to go wrong, and we know what this is like in aviation, it's like trying to catch a ball of string that's been dropped. The more you try to catch the string, the faster it's going to unravel. You don't have a lot of experience to draw on, unfortunately. And looking at that killing zone and looking at that Dunning-Kruger effect, you can see that we're in quite a vulnerable space. And this is a gap that I identified in the market. So what we wanted to say is, well, we know that you've got this luck, okay? And we know that you need to build experience and trade one for the other all the time. But the best thing we can do here is equip you with as many skills as physically possible and the best knowledge and the most safety-minded thinking to give you the best possible fighting chance in the real world. And that's kind of where Infinite came from. So a handful of you have been trained by me. It's why you're slowly going grey, right? Okay? And this became the birthplace of a new era of education. So I started this brand. A lot of people have said to me, Megs, you had such a good business model. Maybe. I think it is a good business model. But truth be told, I'd literally had a tantrum with my boss. I'd walked out and gone, I need to pay some bills. I started lecturing again. That is the truth of the company, and it evolved from there. It's a conversation for another day. But we've grown. We teach from student pilots, your PPL subjects, into your commercial pilots, your commercial subjects, all of your radio, ground theory, going into your instrument rating, ATP subjects, and further into the soft skills environment. So our portfolio does stretch as far as airlines. Spend a lot of time training airline pilots and doing their annual refreshers. But we've partnered with a lot of South African industry. Okay, you're going to throw something at me? I forgot to put Cirrus on my list. I'm sorry. I have to pay for the intro flight now. Okay, so one of our leading partners, Infinite Aviation. We also partner with Central Flying Academy. They're across the way over here. Some of you are from CFA, may have flown there before. We partner with NAC Helicopters, Henley Air, and Powered Flight in the rotor wing domain. I had to teach my brain to think in circles. That was challenging. From there, Superior Pilot Services, Aeroversity is a very strong business partner of ours. And of course, you know as a young aviator that you'll get discounts both with Infinite and with Aeroversity. I think on one ground school, you've already earned more than your subscription and savings. Okay, and then from there, IACM, this is the Mozambique Authority. We train their pilots and their cadets. I work with Signa Aviation in Namibia, the entire Namibian market. And then we work with HAIL, which is now the aviation diplomas, the aviation BCom program, and tertiary education in the aviation management sphere. So that's quite a cool development to go into. So there's a huge scope of work in what we do, and a huge amount of industry network partners, which, as I understand it, is why Tyler wanted me here today. And really just to show you that we can connect you with people that you might need to be in touch with. Generally, we've got somebody who knows the answer or can help you with a query or a question, whether it's finding a maintenance organization, getting hold of a hangar to rent, finding a medical examiner because you need to do a medical. Get in touch with us. Our biggest thing here is to help you become the safest, most successful version of yourself. And 99% of it runs through ground school, but the other 1% runs in this, meeting people, joining hands, and making a network. And that is a little bit about me.
Awesome.
So,
Very good.
thank you. The floor is yours.
Is it subscription based? How do you join? How do you get involved?
Okay, so it's a ground school-based offering. We work both in classroom and on Zoom. We do live Zoom streaming. And the big thing here is human-to-human contact, because learning is very unique to an individual. So for me, it's important to see how you're responding to how I present a topic. So in terms of in-person ground school, we're offering in-person at Grand Central, here across the way at Henley, and at Wonderboom at Blue Chip. We also have an online Zoom platform, and we have, on average, 9 to 13 ground schools running a week. They run throughout the year, so you can hop in and hop out as you need to. It's modular training. So if you decide you want to do human performance now and navigation next week, we will find a way to slot you into the schedule that works for you.
So if you're doing your training at German Flying Academy in your ground school, how does that affect your training ultimately?
It doesn't at all. You're more than welcome to join us from any flight school. You don't have to be at any of our affiliates. And we're seeing this more and more where people are going, I need help, I'm not getting the help that I need. They're getting in touch with us. Unfortunately, going back to the niche and industry, we found that a lot of flight schools were going, okay, we need to offer a ground school. Find a grade 2, give them a textbook and say, teach. And you've got a person who is possibly not interested in the subject, not specialized in the subject, not current with the exam material at that point in time. And as a result, you see people reading. And that's not ground school. That's not being taught. So that's really where we fall in the gap.